I don't know.
Well, I'll give you one hint. So I thought this was 6:30.
Hey there. Hello. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I don't hear.
Sorry, I'm on mute.
You,
Oh, there you are.
yeah, I'm on
I
mute
didn't hear
too.
either one of you. You were both on mute, and I'm like, uh-oh, my end. How's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Not too bad. We're hanging in there.
Yeah.
We're hanging in there. So, I'm just gonna, so I don't, we gotta get this, Karen, we're gonna have this streamed. I mean, not streamed, closed captioned.
Closed captioned, okay.
Yep, just in case. So.
And so you have to make me the captioner. Do you have that ability to do that?
The whatter? Oh, closed caption. You want me to hit that?
Yes.
And assign participant. Okay.
Hopefully they enabled the feature when they set up the link.
If not, he can make you co-host.
I'm trying to assign participant. You guys come up more.
Oh, Uncle Benny, I could log into it.
Assigned closed caption. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
I think I did it. Did I do it?
It looks like it, yep.
All right, step one.
I know, it's amazing what we learn in this
I'm telling
pandemic.
you.
Oh,
Hey, Nick, what's happening?
a video bomb.
He's always near.
I'm in the background making sure technology's working.
Thank
That's
goodness.
my Uncle Benny right there.
I don't see the closed captioning. Where does it come up?
I haven't started typing it yet.
Oh, I see you. Yeah, okay.
So what you have to do on yours, and if you hit the closed caption button and have show, what does it say? Show subtitles,
Yep.
then it should come up.
Oh.
There's a slight delay.
Tina, get out. Oh gosh, my dog.
Okay, so
There's always someone bothering me in this house. Dog, kids.
I know the feeling. I don't know.
Hello,
Why is it not coming up? Did I hit it?
you're on
Yeah.
mute.
It says something here about use a third-party CC service. Is that the same thing or is that different?
No, that's me. So I just have to copy the link when you send it to me, which I did.
Yep. And you put it into your screen text, right?
Yeah, so here it is
So it's-
here.
Yeah.
Here it goes. But there we
There
go.
it is.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay,
It takes
so
time to hit their server.
yeah, I know it does. I have to hit it like a million times for it to go through.
So it looks like our numbers are growing. We already have 12 participants. 13. Wow, it's growing as we speak.
And then I'm going to put in the in the Q&A. I'll put it in the Q&A. You don't have a chat box.
You can't
The
do
link.
anything.
Oh, I can't do it.
You have to hit the, no, close that. You hit the, isn't that the?
Huh?
I was looking at it said Q&A.
Oh, maybe I'll have to just type it in there.
Can you do that?
No, not share screen.
No, I know.
Yeah,
But why
well,
can't I
it's-
put anything in
I
there?
don't know.
Oh, because you know why? Because I'm probably a panelist. I think that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
You send it to me and I'll, send me the link and send me that and I can put it in the Q&A.
All right. Or
Send it to Vinny.
Yeah, you send
So
it to me.
yeah. Let me
Email it
see
to
what
me.
my email is. So right here.
That's why you need 3 screens.
Yeah, that's why I need more screens.
Vinny Searcy.
Is it
Vinny
Vinny?
Searcy.
VC should be.
I forget how to spell his name.
Wait, I think he's on here somewhere. No.
That's,
Oh, no, he sent me an email earlier today.
just V, sirs.
I know it's not coming up. Oh, the one from Pam, yeah. Where's that one? Did you see it?
No, I just
Oh.
type it in.
Okay, what is it? B?
You know what, though? It's not letting me type a question either. Nick.
K-12.
It's not letting him type a question either, he said.
Because he's a panelist.
I know, but he's in charge. He should be able
Oh,
to.
then maybe something's not enabled.
I don't know.
Oh, I got a test from Jeff. All right, Jeff, thank you.
All right, so is it V? It's V Cersei?
Yeah,
Okay, at
Norton.K12.
K12.
MA.US.
Okay.
Need a subject. Try going back to the Q&A and see what, because it popped up there. There was something in the Q&A.
Yeah, but
And
it
it said
doesn't.
answered.
Yeah, no, it doesn't let me do it. That's okay.
Yeah, remember last time I had to send, Karen sent it to me and
Yeah, right. I do remember. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Hopefully.
sorry, everybody. This is all part of,
We're trying to get closed captioning open and it's just not.
Oh, closed captioning's up.
Here it is.
Oh, it's up? Okay, great. Why do
I still need-
titles, right?
do I still need to put the link in?
If folks want to use it other than just on the bottom of the screen, then they can copy and paste that link into their own browser and be
Okay.
able to see like bigger
It's-
chunks of
It's separate.
text. It's just a separate link.
Okay, I'll just type that in.
Vinny, are you able to share your screen or anything or?
Yep. I just
Okay.
wanted to put the link in there.
Great.
All right. So we'll share our. Is it sharing? Oh. Gotta love this. Not sure why it's not sharing.
I see your screen, but it's not the tab you want. So I think you just need to.
There it is.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank goodness. All right. So there we go. Is
Awesome.
that better? Sorry, everybody. All right. So I guess we'll get going. It is 6:02. This is actually, Karen, this is actually your meeting. It's a SEPAC meeting. So I'm going to let you take over. And then when you're ready for me and Casey to move on, we'll do that.
Okay. So I'm just gonna say a little bit about Norton Cpac, and then I will let you all present and answer the questions, which is really what everyone's here for. So my name is Karen Drain, and I am the coordinator of the Norton Cpac. If you don't know what the Cpac is, it is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and each school district is required to have a Cpac. And so I took over coordinating the Cpac just over a year ago. And so the Norton Cpac has been kind of rebuilding and re-energizing for quite a few years now. It has been a little bit of a struggle. And so the goal last year was to increase visibility and outreach. And so we hosted a whole bunch of workshops and events. So hopefully you all have heard at least the name Cpac at some point. We started a Facebook page, an email list, and we have worked on trying to get the information out there. This year, I think we're going to focus on kind of hopefully starting to have more than just me running the Cpac and work on getting a board and some more members involved. So if you are a parent like me and want to volunteer some time, we are looking for some help. So you can message me over on the Facebook page. You can email me at nortoncpac@gmail.com. Hopefully, as we figure out what Cpac is going to be doing this year, we're also going to be adjusting to this new reality that we're in. So be on the lookout for Cpac meetings coming up, and they'll probably be virtual like this, and we'll try to figure out what we're going to do. We will still continue to maybe host some workshops this year. So if you're interested in any specific topics, reach out to me and let me know. Last year we did topics on anxiety. We did basic rights and IEP. For whatever reason, I am spacing out on the other ones, but we did quite a few workshops. And so I think that's it. If you have any questions about Cpac or want some more information or want to get on our email list, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it over to Vinny and Casey, and they're going to talk about this whole returning to school as it relates to special education.
Great, thank you so much. So as Garen said, my name is Vinny Searcy, and I am the new Director of Pupil Personnel here for Norton. This is by no way how I was hoping to meet everybody under these circumstances, but it is what it is, and we're all dealing with it. So we'll get through this together. Just a little bit of background, not to get too much into who we are, but I think it's good to know a little bit of our backgrounds. I've been here in Norton for 2 years. Prior to this position, I was Director of Counseling and Social Emotional Learning. Primarily, my office was at the high school, but I worked at all the different schools in that capacity. Prior to that, I had worked in Brockton for public schools for over 25 years, the last 11 as a special education administrator, working with a variety of different populations, overseeing a number of staff, especially regards to some separate and specialized populations, but also itinerary staff such as speech and OT and PT and all of those good folks. So my original background was school psychologist and school adjustment counselor, and I actually started way back when. I know I don't look that old, but way back when in private psychiatric hospitals and therapeutic-based schools. So that's sort of where I come from. I have sort of a different set of experiences than other folks, but I think Casey, who's our coordinator of special ed, offsets a lot of what I have as well. So I'll let her introduce herself, and then we'll get into the meat of what we're going to talk about tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Russo. Last year, I was the team chair at LG, so I got to know a lot of families that way, and as well as working with a lot of the out-of-district families as well, doing the chairing for those meetings as well. I have been in the field for a long time, about 20 years or so, as a special education teacher, working my way up to team chair and administrator in both public and private school settings. I've worked in integrated preschool classrooms all the way up through transition age, post grade 12, 22 students. Primarily working with more severe intensive students, but I was also a curriculum leader, curriculum director, sorry, for a private special education school for a couple of years as well. So I think Vinny and I work well together. We have very similar styles. We are not micromanagers of our teachers, but we trust who they are as professionals. But we are very invested in being hands-on administrators in the schools as much as we can. So we're excited to get started. And again, as Vinny was saying, this is not the way we wanted to get things going. It was certainly an interesting way to start a new position, jumping in head first to a pandemic, but we're doing the best we can. So please be patient with us. We're doing our best in trying to make the right decisions for our students and for our staff.
So what we'll do tonight, if everybody's okay with this, we'll go sort of through the through this little PowerPoint. Some of it, excuse me, you may have seen, depending on what else you've attended in terms of the Norton Public Schools communication about return to school, or in parts of that return. And then we have a sort of a question and answer FAQ that we already have put together based on honestly questions that we've received from parents, things we've thought about ourselves, things our staff has thought about information that we've worked with in terms of gathering information from DESE, gathering information from other districts and what they're doing. We have been part, I mean, the Department of Ed has really been running webinars, meetings, whatever you want to call them, since before we both took over. Jean was part of those. And then since July, we've been meeting quite frequently with them. Their guidance is everything that we've built into the return from school comes from their guidance, which, to be honest, changes sometimes frequently. So it's sometimes hitting a moving target, but we completely understand why that is. We're all trying to figure out the best way to provide services. So hopefully we get your questions answered. We are going to use the question and answer box. So you can ask the questions that way. You might want to wait towards the end because maybe some of those questions we'll answer throughout the presentation. And then, like I said, we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. If it's student specific to your child, we may just type in, you know, something like, or say, whoever asked that question, you know, please send us an email, because sometimes it's very specific based on IEPs and other situations. And I don't want to give out too much information about an individual child. So we'll take it from there. So I'm going to take the first few minutes and just talk about the return to school in general. We're going to review the models, like I said, how this looks for special education, both around little answers, substantially separate and specialized programs, and then inclusion. We'll have some frequently asked questions review, and then we'll take your questions. So as we know, we have, we're going to have to talk about the different return to school models. The one that the school committee voted on was the hybrid model. And for this, I'm going to try, sorry, this is distracting to me. Let's try to minimize. Here we go. Go back to that. The hybrid model right now is what all of our schools are doing. It's a mix between in-person and remote learning. So what that means is for our K-12 populations, we're going to have two cohorts. I think actually they've changed the cohort names to 1 and 2. You should be receiving information regarding which cohort your child is going to be assigned to. Hopefully, I think they all went out today, is what I was told at the end of the day. So, you know, Norton Mail is being what it is. Hopefully you'll get that soon. So cohort 1, I think they're calling it, would be in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then cohort 2 would be Wednesdays and Fridays. Monday is a full remote day for everybody. We can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Each cohort would consist of about approximately 50% of our students. It took a great deal of work, especially, to be honest, at the upper levels, the high school in particular, to try to divide up the students evenly, especially when you started to have to look at individual classes and breaking down classes, taking into consideration our specialized programming, and then, you know, some requests and so forth. We tried to do our best to keep siblings together when appropriate. Although we did have a few requests for parents who said, please don't keep them all home at the same day. So we met those requests as well, at least we tried to. We tried to make the cohorts as diverse and inclusive as possible. We mixed ability groups and so forth. We did do our best to do that, especially taking into consideration inclusion opportunities, you know, and divided up the classrooms the best we could in that manner. And as I said, students were grouped by family whenever possible. The other option that folks have at this point is Remote Learning Academy. That's something we are calling Parent Choice for Remote. You might hear that term, where the children do not come in person to school. Everything is done at home. And then you have the opportunity, if you decide later on that, geez, I think I want to try the hybrid model, or we come back full in person, you know, some miracle occurs, some magic vaccine or treatment, and we all decide to come back, you know, you have that option obviously as well. And we're going to manage that using, for the most part, different platforms, educational platforms. So for example, at the high school, they're in the middle school, they're using the platform Edgenuity, where they'll be the classrooms, the courses will be run using that platform with educators that support and provide assistance as needed throughout the week. but it is a pretty independent educational academic learning environment, I guess is the best way to put that. In terms of special education services, we will do that. That would all have to be remote with teletherapy and telehealth, for example, as ways of meeting the needs of the students that, in terms of their IEPs, that are taking the parent choice remote. So that is the other option. Obviously, the third option is, again, everybody comes back and we go back to whatever semblance of normal that will be. Okay, so I sort of talked about that already. So in terms of special education services, we have Little Lances preschool. The Little Lances will, because of the way that DESE has set their guidelines. So one thing that we should talk about ahead of time here a little bit is that DESE is designated what they consider high needs students. And that is based on a number of factors. The designation of what level of services that they receive on their service delivery grid, for example, is one of the major considerations. They also look at ages. So preschool, for example, they consider to be a high needs group, especially in terms of the sub-separate or inclusive practice for preschool, given their age and their ability to use technology and so forth and so on. So Little Lances will return to in-person instruction based on DESE and ECC guidance. And we had to meet all the IEP compliance as well as health and safety measures. Currently, there is 2 full-time classrooms and 3 half-time classrooms. We've actually now officially agreed to do Model A, which is basically maintaining exactly what was going to occur at the preschool level, with the exception of instead of having Wednesday as the day when nobody comes in, it has been moved to Monday, except for one specialized program where they do a half day in the afternoon. So essentially for the Little Lancers, the biggest change is going to be the number of preschool models that we have available to us. As you can imagine, that number is down for a variety of reasons. Parents are not signing students up as peer models. So here's my plea: if you know of a peer model that might be interested in coming,
Send them to us.
send them, please. You have a sibling that meets the criteria, please do that. So we are going to do our best to make sure that we get as many inclusive opportunities as we can. We're looking at sort of modifying some of our schedules and so forth to meet those needs. So those students will be coming in. The next group is our substantially separate or specialized programs. And so those folks are now, again, this is likely, but they are coming in. They're going to be returning in person, again, based on DESE guidance regarding IP compliance and obviously health and safety measures. For the most part, when we're talking about the high needs students that are in specialized programs, what would occur is if they have inclusion opportunities. So we have a student that is in a substantially separate program, but he or she goes for inclusive opportunities within the regular ed setting. And they still will do that, but they'll do that with their cohort. So if they're assigned to cohort 1, those programs would go to their inclusive, those students would go to that inclusion classroom on the cohort 1 days. They would not go on cohort 2 days. They would stay within their programs. They would work on the same work that the other inclusion students were given at that time. We'd also use this time to look at any areas of weakness that we thought had occurred that the teachers had picked up on and think the student needs to work on. We'd work on we'd work on itinerary staffing opportunities like speech, OT, PT, school adjustment counselor. We try to do so that we're maximizing the amount of time they are in the regular ed setting with their inclusion peers. So we're going to do our best to make that occur within that program on the quote unquote off days. But they will be there the 4 days like everybody else. On Monday, there's not going to be anybody in the building. On Mondays, there'll be a half day of remote instruction for everybody. And then the afternoons will be, again, depending on, there's still a lot working up in terms of scheduling. For some students, there might be telehealth opportunities in the afternoon with their therapists assigned to them. So there's some opportunities that in the afternoon there might still be contact with special ed staff. We're still working on all of those schedules and working through that. So, all right, so I
I think you
went
kind
through
of
all
went
of
over a
that.
lot of that, yeah.
Yeah. This is just an example of how it might look, and try to summarize at the high school. You know, this idea of cohort 1, the students in the STEP program on cohort A day, or cohort 1 as it's being called now, would go to their class, their science class. But on day B, when the other students with that cohort was in, they'd be back in with their special education staff working on the things we talked about. So just an example of how that would look. You'll be getting more specific information from the regular ed building administration. And then once our teachers are back, we're already starting to look at individualized schedules, class schedules, therapist schedules, and so forth. You'll be getting all of that information at the start of the school year. Again, this is an example of how the hybrid group might look for 3 different groups. And I'll talk a little bit now about our inclusion groups. But here, for example, group 1, this would be our high needs students, STEP students, GRIT, LBC, those particular programs. They would attend in person for 4 days. In the middle school, they'd attend their homeroom, specials and lunch, whichever group they're assigned to. So that's sort of your high needs group. And then group 2 at the middle school is inclusion. Now for all inclusion students, again, remember what DESE's guidance was. DESE said students of high needs. And I know we all may agree or disagree on what that means, but they were pretty specific in terms of which level of service indicates high needs. So for our inclusion students, they would attend with their cohort. So if they're part of a cohort that attended on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they're going to go to school in person on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Wednesdays and Fridays, they'll be at home. They'll be, again, depending on the school and the IEP and the student and a lot of other factors, there will be Zooming or Google Meets with special education staff. They might be telehealth therapy offered at that time, or put into their schedule at that time that they'd have to go to. All of our staff has been training, especially our therapists, on telehealth services, how to provide those. We're providing them with a number of different platforms that they can use to help boost up the engagement around telehealth. And they're actually getting some more training moving forward in the next, right before school starts during those 10 days. So that's just an example. White team would come on Tuesdays and Thursdays for inclusion, then purple team would come on Wednesdays and Fridays. And that would give opportunities to the special ed teachers to work on those non-in-person days, still using some of the like Google Meets and other ways of providing services and meeting the IEPs. I sort of went through that. Elementary special education program, basically it's the same thing I described with the middle school. You know, for the hybrid students, the high needs students, group 1 attends all 4 days, and then group 2 would be Tuesday, Thursday, and then another group might go on Wednesday and Friday. We talked a little bit already about the inclusion and other special education programs. We are going to do our best for students who received itinerary services, or let's say pullout, Wilson, those kinds of services. Our staff is working to develop their schedules and the individual student schedules to provide as much of that time during the in-person days, depending on the IEP and the amount of minutes. However, there may be a need to provide some of that, again, using telehealth or Google Meets, Zoom, and so forth. One of the things beyond the IEP and the cohorts that we have to think about, we also have to be aware of, limiting the number of transitions students have due to health and safety. We have to try to limit the number of transition staff have due to health and safety. So there's a lot of factors to sort of build a schedule around in terms of where staff can be, whether they're going to do pullouts, whether they're going to push in into classrooms. I think one of the things we have to remember is that on the days when they're in an inclusive classroom, you know, those classrooms are not going to be full. They're going to be at half the number of students that would typically be in the classroom. So there's going to be a lot of adults on the days they're in. There's going to be actually a lot of very low student to staff ratio compared to what it is on a normal day. So there'll be a lot of quality, I think, to what people are going to be able to do based on just the numbers on those in-person days. All right, I'm going to let Casey take over to do the frequently asked questions, which I'm sure there's a ton of.
Tons and tons. I was just answering a couple of the questions on the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, I can hear myself multiple times here. Can you hear me now?
I gotcha.
Okay, great. I was just answering some of the questions on the Q&A that I could as you were talking.
Okay, great.
So these are just some of the frequently asked questions, like Vinny was saying, that we've received quite a bit of, or that we felt as though parents would need to know. So the criteria for cohort C is someone who has already been identified as high needs through the IEP process. So that would be primary disability level of needs. So it's services provided outside the general education classroom. The service providers are multi-tiered, so special education and related service providers, and it constitutes more than 75% of the student's day. So the majority of our students do not fall in this category, but it also encompasses students who are assigned to specially designed programs. So any of our students in GRIT, LBC, STEP, BEST, the Step Up, Step Out at the high school are all eligible and fall under that high need category. The less clear one is the unable to engage in remote learning due to their disability related needs. There's also the categories of students who are homeless, foster care, congregate care, and ELL learners. So those are things that we're going to meet individually on with the SST teams at the school to discuss if there's any specific students that we need to really bring back for more time. Again, it'll be kind of based on student specific need, individualized need. What will service delivery for students with disabilities look like in the new normal? So students will receive a consistent schedule of classes and services and interventions as outlined in the IEP. So DESE has been very, very clear in that we are to meet as many of the IEP service delivery goal grid minutes as possible. It's a little bit tricky because a lot of our guys have services that are 5 times 30 or 5 times 60 or whatever it might be, and clearly we're in school for 4 days, not 5. So what we're going to be looking at is the total minutes for each service area as opposed to the days in which it has to be prescribed. So for instance, some of our students have ELA 5 times 30. That will end up working out to 150 minutes. So however we can break that up over the 2 or 4 day schedule. As we get closer to the school year, all the special education liaisons will be reaching out to families to review the schedules, the service delivery, how it will look for each student. They may not be exact in terms of what day and time the services will be happening, but they will be able to say whether it's going to be in a telehealth model or in person, who the person will be starting out to deliver the services, things like that. But it's very important for us in the state for us to make sure that we make contact with families to clear up any questions that they may have about the student service delivery and how we're going to do all that. My child does not meet the criteria for the definition of high needs, however, is a student with a disability. What will services look like for my child in the hybrid model? As Vinny went over with the schedule that was outlined pretty clearly, students will receive those services both in person and remotely, with emphasis being placed on providing as many services in person as are feasibly possible. So on those days where kids are in school for the hybrid model, the 2 days in, we're gonna try our best to do some service delivery of speech and OT and PT as we can on those days. But again, we wanna make sure they're getting as much bang for their buck in their inclusion in their regular classroom setting, and get that socialization with their peers as we can. So one of the speech therapists that we were talking with today was saying if a student has 2 times 30, she's hoping to do 1 times 30 in school and 1 times 30 remotely to meet their needs. So we're going to have to be creative about getting it all done, but again, we'll do our best. All right, so my child meets the criteria for high needs and receives most of their services in a sub-separate setting. However, there is inclusion in their IEP. How will those inclusion services be provided? Are they expected to remain in their sub-separate cohort? Again, as Vinny was saying, due to social distancing constraints and things like that, IEP teams are working every effort to include inclusive settings, even if that's through remote access. So like we said, if they're assigned to cohort 1 or they'll be in the general ed classroom as much as possible. And again, not all of our guys are, some of our sub-separate crew, they're really not going to be accessing the general ed classroom all that often because they don't on a normal day. So we're not going to just put them in for the sake of putting them in an inclusion setting. If they're joining typically for specials, we're going to try to have them join for the specials as best we can as well. So if they go in for art and music and gym, as best we can align them with those things, that's what we'll do as well. We're going to try to mimic the service delivery grid as best possible.
Oh, I seem to be stuck.
Paused? Okay.
Hmm.
Apparently it doesn't think I'm done with this question yet.
All right, let's try. Oh, there we go. Now I gotta go back. Hold on.
There you
There
go.
we go.
If a family opts to participate in remote learning, will they still be eligible for IEP services? Yes, yes, of course you will, of course. That being said, if the parent chooses remote learning, it's assumed that the parent prefers to keep the child out of in-person instruction. So the therapy, the remote service delivery would likely be, so it would be a regular and consistent schedule of classes, services, and interventions, structured learning time to provide access to the standards, frequent interactions with teachers, therapists, and support staff, synchronous lessons, and asynchronous lessons, again, all through teleconference video, Zoom, whatever platform is selected by the therapist. As Vinny was saying earlier, with the parent choice remote model, it's going to be likely a different platform. Edgenuity, Seesaw, Teachtown are primarily the ones that we're going to be using for the different grade levels, but there will be Norton staff providing those IEP services as well. For like Edgenuity for our older kids, there's accommodations that can be made, so their special education staff will be working with those with the company to help institute to individualized accommodations for the student needs. Again,
I think there is one thing we should say in those situations. It may not be the teacher you are typically would be assigned to. So it will be a special education or a therapist, but not all of our staff, you know, obviously cannot be in 3 places at once. So we are looking at utilizing staff in different manners than we have in the past. We have some staff that will be assigned only to remote, to deliver remote services. We may be using additional sort of community providers to help us supplement some of this to ensure that students get their IEP services. So, you know, I do have to be honest that there's only so much we can spread an individual person around. So we are utilizing some of our staff maybe that has just for example, a medical condition that prevents them from coming in, but can provide some of the remote support because of their special education license. Maybe they just do it in a different setting right now. So I do want to be upfront with that because that's the reality of where we're at this point.
okay.
All right, moving on.
Big hot button issue here. How will outstanding team meetings and/or evaluations be scheduled? So we will continue to work with families to meet timelines or agree to extensions for evaluations and re-evals and team meetings as needed. Again, at the beginning of the year, the liaisons and/or the team chairs will be reaching out to parents to schedule evals and rescheduling of team meetings from the spring. A lot of the re-evals were done as annual reviews just to get the timelines met in the spring, and our evaluations are still due. We tried to get some of them done over the summer with staff coming in. It's a lot of work for people to come in and do. We did as many as we could. Not all meetings were held because we weren't able to get the full evaluation completed. So for instance, if it was a full re-eval, maybe we got speech and OT done and we weren't able to get the psychological done, or vice versa. But at least some of the work is done and we can get a head start on that. We will be prioritizing evaluations based on the necessity for completion and consent. So people who are transitioning out soon, turning 22, we need to get things done. Kids we're moving from middle school to high school, elementary to middle. We were really focusing on those ones for the summertime in terms of testing and things like that. Or the ones that had like the really late, had been signed really early. So the ones that were due to be held in mid-March, mid to late March, that we never got the chance to complete the evaluations for, were the ones we really tried to focus on over the summer. So we are going to try to work to meet those deadlines and timelines as best possible. Like I said, we're doing the best we can with the time and the resources that we have, but they will all get done, and your team chairs and or liaison will be in touch to get that stuff scheduled as soon as possible.
One of the things we even discussed today is, if a student is on a hybrid model and it's their day to be at home, and a parent has the ability to take them in and schedule something, let's say with a school psychologist, using sort of the protocols that we need to use, and hand washing and masks and all of those kinds of things, we could bring that particular child in because it would be a one office visit. It's not like they're mixing with their cohorts. So, we're going to be looking at that kind of time frame as well. Again, not everybody's able to do that. We're going to have to be flexible. I keep saying we need to be flexible, kind, and forgiving, because that's, we're just going to have to do our very best to work with families. If you have that ability, great. If not, we'll do the evaluation on the days that they're here. We're going to do our best to be as flexible as possible.
My child receives transportation as a related service in the IEP. Will transportation be provided for in-person services? We have been in contact with families already about students who are currently transported, about their willingness to transport their child to school, or their inability to do so. And we've been working with transportation to arrange pickups and all that stuff. So yes, transportation will be available to students who are required to have it in their IEP. In terms of the preschool, that's always been a bit of a snag for those half-day programs. And we've worked closely with transportation to establish a better system, or a more cohesive system right for this year, because of the strict timelines that we have to follow, and allowing the classrooms and the buses time to get clean in between runs and things like that. So we've got a good plan going there. Students will need to be wearing their masks on the bus. All age levels, all abilities will have to have a mask on, and maintaining the social distancing while on the bus. If things change and you said to Sam or someone that you would not need the bus, or that you did and you change your mind, we would request 72 hours notice so we can amend the routes and make sure that we can get them on the bus and pick them up and all that good stuff. But
there
yes.
are pretty strict guidelines in terms of health and safety, in terms of how far people can be seated. We have to have a certain distance. We have to have the ability to make sure we make those adjustments if we have to add somebody or take somebody off the van, especially adding somebody. So that's why we asked for that 72-hour turnaround.
How will students who require class support receive it during Google and Zoom sessions? So I'm a parent of 2 children on IEPs myself, who sat here doing remote learning while trying to do my job. So I get it. It is not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. So we will be trying to utilize breakout rooms as much as possible with paraeducator, teacher, special ed teachers, therapist as much as possible to help support students and keep them on task as best possible. Teaching assistants are working under the license of the special ed teacher, so they have been trained on all of the platforms, or they've in the process of being trained. And during that 10-day PD period that we have, all the staff will be receiving significant amounts of PD for all of the different platforms, different avenues of accessing technology, along with all the health and safety and all that stuff. But so the teaching assistants will still be employed and will still be able to access and support students in those Google sessions. Again, as I said earlier, at the start of the year, the special ed liaisons will be reaching out to parents and having those collaborative conversations aimed at developing those comprehensive services. So finding those areas where addressing the child's primary areas of need and their ability to access remote learning will be part of those conversations and ways that we can support and make them more accessible and more effective and appropriate for the students. So even if we have to institute different routines on how to use their technology, providing materials to support work at home, all those types of things, that will be part of those conversations with the special education liaisons as we start getting back in the swing of things.
I know even from the perspective of the regular ed staff and how they're going to provide some supports to students during the in-home days. They're looking at taping lessons, having a library of lessons, which I think will be very helpful for our special ed staffs too, and our students, because they'll be able to take some of those recordings, play them back, break it down together, see this is where you had a concern, okay, let's look there. So, you know, on those in-person days, the teachers will be recording some of their, or looks like they're going to be recording some of their lessons and directions. So now when the para or the teacher from the special ed for support would be able to sort of work through that with the students. So we're trying to think of different ways to use technology to support those times. All right, so that's our frequently asked questions. I'm going to try to get us back, stop sharing my screen, get us back and see if that works. Look at that, we are back. So it looks like we have 9 questions right now.
This first one is a great question. What is the cleaning schedule? Are there other districts that are doing Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday with Wednesday cleaning in between? Also, is there less mixing within the cohorts? But with our schedule, there'll be mixing with the cohorts, so what is the cleaning schedule? So we have worked very, very closely with Wade and the custodial staff, and they have a very comprehensive plan about cleaning and timelines. Vinny, do you want to kind of touch upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the questions in again, I was not part of that particular, I was not part of the hybrid subcommittee. So there was 3 subcommittees along with the larger overarching committee around reopening of schools. I was on the larger committee trying to give support to all 3 of the subcommittees. But the hybrid committee, the reason they decided on Monday to do it this way was because they wanted to, from a both from a social emotional as well as an academic perspective, they felt it was best if the students were all together on the first day of the week, where they could review the materials for the week, go over the expectations, be together virtually as a whole group, do some of those activities and set the tone. So, but before they moved on with that, they did meet with Wade, the head of our facilities, to talk about the cleaning schedule. And they are going to clean every single night. Unlike other districts, I don't know what they call it, hydrostatic something, but they have like basically these giant backpacks that spray and use some kind of electronic. I don't really understand it. I'm just.
It's science stuff. I don't know.
It's science stuff, and I'm not a science guy. But that's something that we have that other districts don't. The way they're even setting up the way the folks, custodial staff is going to be cleaning throughout the day, the high area places and so forth, and then you know, immediately moving to cleaning as soon as the students leave. I mean, the difference, one of the big differences from a typical school year, let's say at the high school, is you're not having anybody hanging around. They're not going to be able to stay for clubs, at least at this point. There's not going to be sports, or not the degree of sports, if you know, although that still is at the state level in some way. You know, they're going to have a lot more opportunities to do some of the cleaning that they maybe couldn't start until later in the evening due to, you know, other activities happening in the building. So they felt that the cleaning piece was going to be scheduled in a way that they would be able to address those needs in between. The other reason they decided to go with Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday, Friday is the idea of having students not away from their teachers and their peers for a longer period of time. They felt that that was beneficial, that it wasn't 2 days. You know, somebody at a Monday, Tuesday wouldn't see their teacher until, you know, what was that? 5 days would go by before they would see a teacher or a peer.
Mhm.
So that's where that came from. As far as something like, I know one of the questions I think was about preschool as well. At that level, we have a very strict schedule of as soon as the AM group leaves, the custodians are in there, literally behind them, cleaning and doing that kind of stuff. And then the reality is for some of the classrooms, we're going to be cleaning as we go. You know, if you're looking at changing areas, you're going to be cleaning that. If we're looking at manipulatives, we're not going to share manipulatives between cohorts, so not share manipulatives between AM and PM. There will be an AM group and a PM group. We're going to limit, honestly, some of the things that is typical in terms of sharing. Like, I feel like we're going to have a whole generation. We're going to have to teach to share because we're going to tell them not to share right now, which as a SEL person feels really bad, but it's the reality of the situation we're in. So they've worked really hard. I know Wade, like I said, has been working really hard to set up schedules for his folks to do their cleaning. So.
Next question. So what would high-risk remote learning look like? So the high-need students who are in remote learning. Again, it would be with that same platform with, if they receive services from speech and OT, it would be teletherapy, and it would be that online learning platform at this point.
Yeah, and we would have, you know, again, the idea of having special education staff there to support and do some meeting times with them to make sure they're able to access. And I think it's a little bit of a harder question too, because it depends on the age and the what the high needs, why it's high needs. You know, what kinds of service are we talking about? What kinds of issues around the disability are we talking about, and how to support that? It's going to be a bigger challenge, especially for certain populations. There's no way around that. I'm not going to, I hate to say, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I don't want to come off as it, but it's going to be a challenge for everybody. We'll have to work very closely together.
Yes. Next question. How will kids that have 504s have their needs met? Well, the 504 is a legal binding document. So that is, it's the law. So all of their needs will be met in some capacity. So on the in-person days, all their accommodations will be in place. So for ADHD and anxiety. Yeah, again, so it's whatever is written, we have to meet the requirements for. So we'll get it done as we can.
So, I mean, obviously things like extended time, you know, those kinds of things, we can absolutely do that. You know, it's just, again, we'll have to look at each individual case and how do we do that. So there's a particular accommodation that needs to get met. Well, what does that look like in person versus remote? And we will do our best to meet that. You know, again, it might be chunking the assignment in a different way. It may be offering extended time. In some ways, some of that's going to be available to kids kind of based on what's going on. So.
Yeah. Do you feel a speech IEP can be met remotely? I think, again, as we were saying, everything is individualized, and it'll really depend on the child and what the needs are. I feel like our staff are going through significant amounts of training. Our speech therapists have all been trained on telehealth through ASHA, so they are all very equipped to handle those things.
I mean, we have contracted and to do some consultation and perhaps even some direct service with a very specialized program that does telehealth. And speech therapy being where they started. And this particular group does it for, to be honest, they started off doing it for remote, rural school systems, right? Where they can't find a speech therapist in the middle of South Dakota or somewhere. And they've actually had really good success. I mean, again, I think it does depend on what the issue is, what the goals and objectives are. But there has been significant evidence, especially around speech, to be honest. It's probably the one that's had the most, in terms of what we do, the most feedback, research, platforms. We had multiple platforms that our speech and language folks looked through. They spent all of June working in as a subgroup to try to look at what's the best platforms to use, what best resources to use remotely, using telehealth, and really worked hard to get those. We've purchased a number of them already. We want them to get a good feel for those base programs, and then we'll continue to look at providing them with additional supports. So I think there is evidence of it, but again, we'll have to take it one case at a time in some situations.
So the next one is, my child took advantage of both before and after school extra help and support to keep up in addition to the IEP services. Will these opportunities be offered on in-person days? At this point, no, we're going to need the time to get the buildings clean every day and to get people in and out. We are trying to work on options to do some extra help on remote days. Again, they're still being worked out, so we don't have specific plans on any of that. But we're doing our best to try to come up with, I feel like I'm saying that a lot, and we're trying our best. We really are. I'm very sorry. I hate to be repetitive, but it's just the more we accomplish, the more things change. So yeah. It's just we're
working with the teaching staff, the union, to sort of figure out a way to make that more quantified. I do believe, a lot of your, teachers stay after school because they stay after school, right? So a lot of them do it because that's what they know is helpful. So they may not be able to do it in person, but I'm guessing a lot of them will also provide that in some way on the days that they can. So maybe on those remote days, the students that are at home will, be able to check in on those days after school while the other kids are going home. So, I can't mandate a teacher to do that right now, but I think most of them will do it, and we're trying to actually build that into the schedule using some of the hours that we have available to us for them. So it's something Dr. Bayet is very much aware of, not just for special ed, but for regular everybody. We all know that. We'll do our best to provide it.
Do you have an idea what the Step Out program, 18 to 22 years old, will look like? So Vinny and I actually met with Jamie Mall, the teacher of that program, last week to talk about some of the challenges that she's facing in terms of getting her students out into the community, because that's a huge part of the Step Out program. And community sites aren't as readily able to come by these days. So we're really trying to be creative about finding things that don't have a lot of people interaction. So, and finding things on site or within the schools that they can do in vocational opportunities. Grocery stores are still going to hopefully work out okay. It's going to be a lot of permission slips signed by parents to make sure and make sure that they're okay with kids going out and doing things. But we're working with Jamie to try to really come up with some.
Yeah, we're looking at things like travel, more intensive travel training. Again, the van that we use for that program sort of limits how many people we can have. So those interactions are going to be 1 to 2 or 2 to 1. It's going to be pretty intensive. But the reality is, we are dependent on, a lot of that stuff is dependent on the providers, and they're not open, or they're not willing to sort of have folks there. We're actively seeking other opportunities where we can do some vocational, pre-vocational kinds of things for, I don't know, like the veterans or something like that. So if anybody knows of some place where our 18 to 22-year-old group could go and do some vocational work or pre-work, we'd be happy to take any suggestions. I would tell you right now, we are open for any kinds of suggestions like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. If a child 4 years old is unable to wear a mask, will that child not be transported via bus? We would require some significant documentation for the bus company if they were to be.
We are going to do. We realize that there's individual issues there, but just to address the larger issue. During the 10 days, and we've actually started already, I have a meeting tomorrow with the Social Emotional Learning and Behavior Committee. We are going to be working on setting up expectations for all of the students they're using our positive behavioral systems that we use, our PBIS systems, like at the middle school, the bricks that they introduced, that kind of, there's a whole system that goes behind that really focuses on expectation, social lessons. We know that we're going to have to go through all of that. We did have a very small extended school year program with some of our littlest folks for a few weeks. And I was pleasantly surprised at how well they did do with their masks. Just everybody knows. The issue was not the masks as much, although again, the littlest ones did, they had it on. Sometimes it wasn't on the right, part of their head, but they quickly put it back.
It was on.
The biggest issue you're going to have with the little ones, to be honest, is we're all social creatures, right? I think this is going to be the biggest issue with the little ones and the big ones. That's the way I look at it. The high schoolers and the preschoolers, they want to be together. So that was the hardest thing. It wasn't the mask. It wasn't the limitations of what they could share or they couldn't share. They wanted to be closer to each other. So that's something we're going to have to work really hard on at all levels, but I think especially at the preschool and high school, because it's just that part of your life where you're really, as developmentally, that's what kids want to do. So we will do our best to reinforce and teach, the mask behavior. But if it's an absolute no-go, then that's something we need to discuss individually, have some documentation, and then have discussions about how that would look. So some of this is beyond our, just so folks know, some of this is, based on public health and other agencies that are dictating some of what we were able to do and not do.
Right. This next question kind of dovetails off of the one that you were just saying about social animals. Do you have any recommendations on how to provide special needs students who remain full-time remote to socialize with peers? His social well-being is one of my biggest concerns. Social well-being is one of our biggest concerns for all of our friends, whether they're on an IEP or not. That's definitely something. And I'm going to leave this one to Mr. School Psychologist.
So, again, I'm sorry, I need to be sort of blunt that, seeking out, using resources maybe like the SEPAC, where there are folks who are also looking for connections, and using that time to say, hey, maybe we can do a socially distanced walk in the woods, or if there's particular things they like to do outside. We're running out of outside time, believe us, we know that. But any kind of outside play, again, depending on your individual child's ability to use this kind of platform for social interactions. I'm usually not a big fan of video games, but there are some video games that, obviously they can play together, they can have a headset, they can do those kinds of activities. I've seen people, watch movies together and share a screen. It's not ideal, but it's social interaction. I think, like all of us, we're all struggling to find ways to socialize in a safe manner. I wish I had better answers than that. I think once we, get everything sort of settled, these base, the foundation of what we're doing, those are the things we're going to have to look at. How do we open up clubs? How do we, start to have our activities happen either remotely or in a different manner?
I just
I'll
want
just
to
be honest.
mention,
Go ahead.
that my daughter did a remote Percy Jackson trivia event through the Sharon Public Library, and thinking creatively. It was just it was her interest, and it was shared interest with peers, and it was just a silly little trivia game.
That's great.
So I think there is opportunities for people to think creatively, whether it comes from the schools or it comes from the libraries, or parents just organize it based on interests.
Yeah, I know the libraries are trying to do a lot of things like that. I've heard, then I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I've heard some of the colleges, honestly, because their students are not going to be able to have the same opportunities around, placements and so forth, that they're going to look to offer opportunities like that. I'm meeting with one of the owners and directors of a counseling agency in the area who's willing to work with us to support us. And we're talking about maybe doing some groups through the school system, sort of limited time, but set of social groups or groups to target specific areas. I know somebody had asked about ADHD and anxiety. You know, we realize that there's probably going to be a lot of anxiety. We're looking to do some teen, you know, girl groups for our teens. You know, so we're kind of turning over every rock we can to decide. And we've had some really good responses. I mean, this individual is going to, you know, lose money for this venture. There's ways around it. So, you know, but knows she's somebody who's in it for the kids and wants to do well. So we're looking for those opportunities. I think once we open and we get settled, it'll give myself and some of our folks on the social emotional learning committee opportunities to do more of that. Right now we're focused on the sort of the foundation of the house. We'll start to add the windows and the curtains as soon as we can. Not that I'm downplaying their social emotional, but we've got to get people in. We got to get the safety pieces in, and then, you know, really start to bang on the community doors and say, okay, what can we do together? How, like I said, the colleges, how can I help you? You help me. You know, those kinds of things that we're looking to do. We just honestly haven't gotten there yet. So.
All right, great. Next question. So when you struggle to get your kid to attend remotely, will they still get credit for being there? Well, they're there, yes. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thought process of when they're in class and they're struggling to attend. I mean, they're still there. But again, those are the opportunities where we can talk to the team or the special ed liaison and try to come up with some strategies together to help with his or her attention and ability to attend, and some schedules or different things that we can put in place to help assist that in the home setting. There's ways that we can all work together to help with that.
And I mean, the good and the bad is, you know, the Department of Education is absolutely asked. We have no choice but to take attendance. So we're working on, a whole other group of folks is working on how that's going to look and what that means for remote and days the kids are not there, and what does attendance actually mean. Obviously the days are here, that's traditional. So, you know, we're gonna work with you to try to help with that situation any way we can.
And then kind of on the same vein, we have another question. Will inclusion students be penalized at the middle school for work that they are not able to complete on remote learning days? For example, even asking for assistance, they still do not fully understand. Will they be provided with extra time to get the assignments in so they can further get further clarification on their in-person days? Yes.
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, yes, they will get the help, not yes, they will be penalized. Sorry, my apologies. Yes, they are in big trouble. No, just kidding. They're not. It's school. We want kids to learn. We want them to get better. And we know that this isn't easy. We know that this is a brand new way of learning for everyone. And our students are going to need even more support than they did when they were in school every day. And again, I think it's really important for us to remember that this is not the emergency remote learning that was done in the spring. This is structured remote time. They will have a schedule. There will be check-ins with teachers, with therapists, with teaching assistants, whoever it might be, in intermittent points throughout the day, so that it's not just, okay, here's your assignment for the day, finish it at some point. It's going to be much more structured than it was in the spring.
And the building administration, and Dr. Baetter in particular, has talked a lot about the idea of, you know, we're looking at project-based learning. You know, there's going to be, there'll be breakouts, right? It'll be, you know, it's not going to be all, not in every case, but a lot of these assignments are not going to be all or nothing in one day, okay? So you come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, have your in-home day, and then Thursday, everything's due. The idea would be more project-based. You know, you might even be working in some smaller groups. There's different things that they're going to do. So, you know, and then the liaisons will have to work with the regular ed staff on what that's going to look like for that individual child or set of children. Again, we're all sort of learning this together. We're gonna have our ups and downs, but you know, the idea is we want kids to be involved and engaged in the activity. So I'm hoping, you know, the idea is that these would be more self-driven or areas of interest whenever possible. Those are the kinds of things we're looking to do.
Yeah.
I personally think is great teaching, and you know, prior to some of the MCAS kinds of things was what we all did to learn. So we're hoping. All right, what are we moving on to
All
here?
right, so at the upper grades, what are the consequences if a student does not keep their mask over their mouth and nose? Particularly interested in students in LBC and inclusion classrooms.
So there is going to be a set of expectations around that. The building administration is working with Dr. Bayetter on what that's going to look like. It's going to actually be reviewed by the school committee. So yes, to be honest, there will be consequences. However, just like any other part of our discipline code, when you're talking about individual areas in disability or need, we need to address that through behavioral, interventions, social stories, those kinds of approaches. We recognize the need for mask breaks. So one of the things you're probably going to hear or see for all age children is a lot more breaks, both from a motor perspective as well as a just simply for mask breaks. So you might hear, oh, we went outside for 5 or 10 minutes twice during the day, or we took a walk to the big empty gym and we all spread out and took our masks off. Those are the kinds of things we're going to try to do. Again, I was very surprised at how well even the little ones did with their masks. I think, this would be different if we were walking in March. We only had 2 weeks off and then everybody had to come back and say, bam, everybody's wearing a mask. Now they've been exposed to it, they've seen it, many of them probably have worn them out in public. The expectation will be there that their peers will. So, we're hoping to work with our students, not just punish them, but we also need to make sure that, we're doing the best we can to keep everybody healthy.
All right. I just lost my place. I apologize.
How will extended test time be handled with limited in-school time? On an individual basis, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that, you might actually see more assessments. I know that's a high school question. Some of the assessments actually may be done using, for example, Ingenuity, even though that's the platform we're using for remote. Parent choice remote, there's opportunities to use some of that to supplement what's going on during the in-person days, right? We can take parts of that. So that might be the case. There may be, again, more project-based. If need be, we're going to have to find a time, whether it's during a study or some other time to make sure that we give those opportunities. Yeah, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be, maybe the tests aren't as long as they typically are. The quizzes aren't as long as they typically are. I know there's been discussion at the curriculum level and at the administrative level about looking at assessments and how we're assessing work a little bit differently, which I think is a benefit to our students, especially those that need extended time.
All right. Next one, if kids can't get online or Zoom, et cetera, will they be marked absent? For instance, if the internet is down, Zoom is down, power is out. I know that power outages in Norton are a real thing. I mean, obviously, initially they'll be marked absent. I think that if it's a technological issue along those lines, if you can get in touch with the teacher or whoever it is, let them know the rationale and we can kind of work it out from there. If there is an issue with internet or things like that, please reach out to us and we can talk to Karen Winsper about getting hotspots or doing things like that. But
well, I mean, I guess it's sort of like, late to school because the car broke down is different than I was late to school because I didn't feel like getting out of bed, right? I mean, that's, I guess, how I would look at it.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to work together. I mean, I think the other thing, like I said, is there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration and work together. We're not out here to try to, no way do we want to punish kids, right? But we want to hold our standards will be higher. This is school, not that it wasn't in the spring, but that was an emergency situation. So, we're gonna have to work together. Obviously, if your internet's down or there's a technological issue, then, that occurs. If you use the folks that were on when we first started, you saw I had some technology issues. We're all gonna struggle with that. We're all gonna learn these new platforms, including the kids together. So
yep.
We'll work together to make it work.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, somebody had written to the parent who asked if speech remote worked. She said, I can tell you it did for her child. Her son received speech for quite some time with a teacher, or I'm assuming a therapist, over telehealth. The child was 6 and was nonverbal a year ago, and now he speaks full sentences. So it was wonderful for him. It's been really interesting, I'll say, for just about that example, and thank you for sharing that. I'll be honest, some of our students that I thought were going to struggle with the remote learning loved it and did fantastic. And then there was some that I thought would do great and didn't. So there's that. But yeah, I think they adapt. That's the one thing about children that I've learned over my many years, both as a professional, as a parent. They're pretty adaptable. When we are positive, when we are encouraging and forgiving of ourselves and them, I think it can go a long way. So.
Next one, on the remote days, will you be able to assist parents in meeting the accommodations for their kids who are on 504? For instance, if they need items from OT to help them focus throughout their learning, like bands around the desk. Again, that will be one of those individualized conversations to have with the liaison or the school adjustment counselor, or whoever it might be, in terms of service delivery and meeting accommodations and those things. We'll do our best to help as best as we can, even providing strategies on ways to kind of amend the accommodations, if you will.
For the home setting, yes.
Different options to meet those needs. But again, individually, you can talk to the liaison or the therapist or whoever it might be.
There's a lot of things around that, particularly that you can do at home that we would never be able to get away with at school. So those are the kinds of things that the OT or liaison or somebody like that could have a conversation. Just that, you couldn't do in a larger setting that you could do individually. I mean, if they were working on something that need to be upside down on the couch while they're doing it, which I've seen, and that works for them and they get their work done, that's great at home. Obviously, you can't do that at school, but we definitely. I lived with a son who's now in college and out, but he listened to music when he did his work. I don't understand how he did it, but it worked for him. Obviously, he couldn't do that in school, but it actually helped him stay focused. So there are absolutely things that we could do or suggest that might be helpful around that.
Next one, are there details regarding student visits to their school before the 16th to meet their teachers and help them prepare them where they go and which spaces will support them? We're working on that with each building's administration. We're trying to work around custodial, janitorial things, health and safety needs. I know that some of our staff are working on social stories and either via paper or
like remote videos.
Remote videos and things like that, doing virtual tours around buildings. Again, we're working on it, and more information to come on that one. Next one, along the lines of looking for private tutoring for interested educators who would be willing to private tutor to get the things ready. That would have to be kind of done on your own. We can't really.
Unfortunately, we can't recommend one or the other.
I'm answering this question right now. That's going to have to be a parent word of mouth kind of a thing. We can't really get involved in that part. But thank you for your strong effort to figure all this out. No easy feat. That is for sure. You're absolutely right. I
like the blow up outside family movies in the fall. That's awesome.
That's a great one. Yeah. Metal detecting group. I like that one too. That's great. Yeah. Definitely different. Is there flexibility within the plan if my child struggles attending fully remote? Can he shift to the hybrid 4-day as an IEP student? He did extremely well during the last few months of school, but he's moving to the middle school and sometimes struggles with change. We're familiar with that struggle. Yes. Parents do have the option to switch back and forth, but hopefully not back and forth, but to switch between the options as it fits their needs, or if their child is struggling with one model versus another. So if you do choose fully remote and then a couple weeks in you're like, this is just not working for us, get in touch with the team chair or the special education liaison, and we can try to figure out a plan to get them back in.
And I think we would need some time, to sort of transition them in, make sure, especially if we're dealing with transportation, as I said, that can be tricky. And if you are looking, you know, again, if we're looking at which cohort, we may have to make some changes there. So we just need some time sometimes to do that, but it's absolutely within your preview to do it.
Next one, do you think you'll be able to share some of the tips the parents use at school so we can make home go easier? Absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely do some sort of pointers, helpful hints type things for students. It might have to be specific to grade levels and different programs, but we can absolutely put some things together. Karen, is that something that we could do through Cpac or put on?
You just read my mind because
Oh, great.
so much of the questions talked about parent support. And so
Yeah.
I thought, you know, even when the question about setting up space with strategies that OT might use in a classroom, certainly that's something that, you know, if one of the OT providers wanted to do a
That'd
little
be great.
bit of tips or.
And I know the through even again through the regular ed services, I think they're looking to do some trainings on some of the technology and some of the other factors. So you know, structure and so forth. I'm guessing that's going to be part of what they do as well.
Yeah. So Karen, maybe you and I can be in touch the next week or so, and we can try to figure out a format to get some of these helpful hints and things like that onto an accessible format for everyone, a website or
Sure, yeah.
in some modality. Yeah.
I love this question. This we luckily came across. I love that line.
We luckily came across our own Chromebooks. You sure weren't lucky, let me tell you. It's not easy to come by these days for our children. Sixth graders, high needs, and second graders. Now, will we be able to access all learning platforms at home, or we need to bring the Chromebooks to their schools for uploading of these platforms?
Oh, so they're so I guess I was understanding that the students' Chromebooks, or are they saying their own?
They have their own. They have their own personal ones.
Oh, so they don't have ours.
Right. So for the most part, I think they're online-based platforms. There may be some that do need to get uploaded. Again, we would have to talk to Karen Winsper and the tech department about more specifics about those things.
Most of the platforms are going, as long as they have their
student login information.
Their login information. Liaison should be able to get that to you. A lot of the students are going to have their own email addresses. They may not be active email addresses, but they'll be email addresses. I know they're moving to try to do, and everybody will love this, including our staff and me, for example, one sort of like a one login situation where you just have to log in one time, you know, and you're on a dashboard, and that dashboard has, you know, whatever, all the things you need.
Yeah.
They're working towards that. It's quite the endeavor to do it. So I think that's something we may be hearing of down the road. So having a one-step login would be very helpful for all of us. Because even when I was working at the high school, I used to get, what's my password from this and what's my password from that for all the kids, and then half the parents and even the staff. So yeah, I think this will be a benefit to everybody. So yeah, that's where we're headed.
All right. That's all we have in the Q&A. Is there anything else? Oh, something else just popped up.
What a lunch is going to look like in the school days. Are they eating in the classroom? So
that's going to be a building by building decision, I believe.
That'll be based on the buildings themselves. What we're going to ask our PBIS teams to do is to try to go through that process with the students. So they're working with the building principals, with Wade from facilities, as well as public health. What's the word I'm looking for there? Department of Health folks, to look at each of the buildings. I know there's a plan being developed for each one of the buildings. I'm just gonna be honest, I don't have that in front of me right now. There's been many different options they've discussed, and they probably have them. I just haven't been given that information right now. You know, everything from some of the buildings have the capacity to do it in the cafeteria. Others do not, because we'd end up having to have, you know, welcome to school, here's your lunch. And then goodbye, here's your lunch, and everything in between, if you did the capacity, like at the high school, for example. So we're trying to figure out whether we're going to use the gym, whether we're going to do grab and go. Some districts honestly went to at their high school, they went to a half day simply because they could not figure out how to feed the kid.
Mhm.
We don't
I'm
feel
gonna-
that's a way not to go to school. Just because you can't feed the kids, we'll figure out a way.
And if this is a personal question, but
Yeah.
if kids are eating in classroom, I'm going to assume that no peanuts at that point, right? I mean,
Yeah, we'd have to go through all of that. Yep,
because
We have
Yeah.
to,
I
yeah.
know, I know for our family, that's a
yep,
big
yep.
situation that
yeah.
I need to start working on now,
Right,
which is
right.
like
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
eating peanut butter for lunch. Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, we have to sort of think of all of those pieces. And this is the thing, and I hope, you know, folks understand that every time we start down one path, you know, 3 other things come up. And I'm not saying it for sympathy, although I could use some sympathy right now. What we're just saying is for explanation, because that's why when it takes, you know, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay, let's figure that out. Okay, let's move on to this next thing. You know, there's always something that's occurring. So, you know, we completely understand the frustration. We wish we had more answers. We wish we were able to get the answers to you sooner. You know, I'll probably have to beg for forgiveness now, because some things will not happen the way that we thought they were going to happen. We'll have to readjust and we'll have to recommunicate. We're trying to do our best to communicate, you know, when we have the information. You know, Casey and I did not do this earlier because we just didn't have the information. And for us, taking over, even though Jean was absolutely wonderful and gave us lots of information, that's different from experiencing yourself. So we had to learn about a lot of what was going on, get our heads wrapped around what Desi was saying and how that would work for us. So that's where we're at. But we are available. Please don't hesitate to email or reach out to us. We will do our absolute best to get back to you. If for some reason, I'm going to say personally, if for some reason you send me an email and you don't hear back from me within 24 hours, please send it again. I'm getting, I can't even tell you how many emails. So if I look at it on my phone, I'm like, oh, I have to answer that mom or that dad back. And I forget to mark it as unread. It goes down into the whole of my emails. So
abyss.
please, please.
The email abyss.
I pride myself in getting back to folks within 24 hours. So if you don't get that return, please just don't hesitate. All right. Well, if there's no other questions.
And I just want to say from the Cpac, thank you to Vinny and Casey for answering all the questions and arranging this. And another plug for anyone who's interested in more information about the Cpac to reach out to me.
All right, great.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having us, guys, and we look forward to working with you as we get underway and in the future as things go on.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Vale, for your kind words too.
Thank
We had
you
to
very
thank you at the
much.
end.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a great night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.